pull up. All right, thank you, Fiona, working the mics here. So today we're hearing from George. George is a friend of mine going back to Cleveland, Ohio. I think I first saw George at a SHRM meeting in Cleveland and was just blown away by just his knowledge and his energy. And I had him present a few times at our Cleveland chapter. He's been on our national stage a few times. He's also been throughout the country doing Disrupt HR, which is kind of like the TED Talk of HR, I guess. He's
Yeah.
very well sought after for a lot of reasons. His organization, Blue Streak Consulting, is an amazing organization centered around, I wrote my notes down here, training, coaching, DEI, keynote speaking, coaching. Prior to Blue Streak Consulting, George was also at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. He actually showed us a real money tree. There is such a thing as a money tree. We got to see that at one of our Cleveland meetings, which was pretty cool. Also was at the United Way, Greater Cleveland. Actually, no, you serve on boards, number of boards, George. United Way, the Cuyahoga County Public Library, and a few other things. So, man, did I get it all, George?
I
I feel
don't
like I'm
know.
not doing you enough service.
I got
I
some
think
paid work. I got some free work. There's a lot of free work in there. So those boards is just another word for part-time job that you pay to do.
that's right. That's right. And George
I,
let me know that you played some basketball like at 6 a.m. this morning. So he's got a ton of energy, raring to go. Our discussion today is on the topic of the manager's role in employee development. And by manager's role, that's us managing our employees. And I think it also extends down to the managers reporting to us. Are our managers, really working to develop the rest of the team? And so that's our discussion today. I think I've nailed it all. Let's do this. You ready, George?
so this is a 5-hour session.
5 hours. We'll take a break at 2.5 hours. Megan is like, "Oh no, 5 hours! I thought it was only like 90 minutes." Yeah. So I think you're good to go. I think we're on for like 60 minutes plus or minus some questions at the end. Take us away.
All right. I will share my screen. I have some of the slides. That thing is obligatory. Get this going. All right. So, hey, welcome. Looking forward to hopping into this conversation. And this is a conversation I cannot hear myself talk for too long before I hear other folks. So there will be plenty of spots where you can hop in, and I want to hear some conversation with the group. It's not just a presentation, it's an opportunity for us to really think through these challenges that you have. They're going to be unique to your organizations. Right now, I help a lot of different size organizations. So I know the challenges are very unique. I've had the fortune of being at different kinds of organizations. So Fortune 500 companies, utilities, libraries. I was in charge of DEI for the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. I led the HR business partners. Then I was in charge of strategy for the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland before I decided to go out on my own, or as I like to call it, I was in charge of strategy for the Illuminati. So if you have any strategy things, just let me know. I love starting off with this quote, especially when you talk about helping your employees develop within your organizations. So if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. That's one of my favorite quotes, because a lot of times you as leaders, you're going to be dealing with folks who, they're working really hard, but they don't really know which way they want to go with this career thing, or they don't know how to develop. They just know they're going to show up and work hard. So the goal for this conversation is for you to be able to be thoughtful about how should I be thinking about intentionally developing your employees for the betterment of your organization. Yes, it's going to help their career, but at the end of the day, you want to improve that bottom line. And I'm a strong proponent that you increasing the skill sets and the career paths and the vision career-wise of your employees will help your organization perform better and arrive better at the objectives you set out for the organization. So this is a session roadmap. We may or may not get through this in 60 minutes. There's a bunch here. So what we will do is after we go through each of these sections, like each section has like 3 slides and 3 major points I want to hit on, we'll just pause and just talk about that section. So that way you don't have to hold your questions to the end. You can put them in the chat. You can yell out. Anything's fine. I have 2 daughters, they're 14 and 11. So any behavior you do will be better. I assure you. So let's make sure this is interactive. So we're going to start off with assessing needs here. So when you're talking about the people who are in your teams, like identifying the skill gaps and growth areas is a good starting point for you to think about how you are helping employee development with them. And the question is like, where do those come from? So hopefully you have job descriptions in regards to the roles you have people in, and you have expectations for what those folks should be doing. No employee is perfect. No employee is a perfect match for the job description or the role that they're in. So there are some things they might do better than what you expect for this role, but there are other things they might do and might not do as well. So it's your job to have the understanding of what skills and abilities that you need for that role, and then to be able to evaluate the people that you have in those roles of what things they do really, really well, but what things can they get stronger on. So that starts off with you, and that starts off with you having a good understanding of those jobs they're supposed to be doing. Now, depending on the size of your organization, for much smaller organizations, they're fluid because in smaller organizations, the positions are less specialized and you wear a lot of the proverbial hats. So that's okay, as long as you as COOs and operating folks in your organizations have a good understanding of what the expectations are for those folks. Because if you don't have a good understanding of the expectations of people in your organization, imagine what their expectation, what their understanding is. So it starts with you, making sure that you can identify the skill gaps and growth areas that they have for the roles that you expect them to play. And if you have done recruiting well, hopefully these are people who will be growing beyond the skill gaps and growth areas in their current role and are able to grow into something bigger and develop and move into other positions within your organization. But this is the first thing, identifying those skill gaps and growth areas. And that starts off with you having a clear understanding of what you expect out of each role within the organization. The second thing, now, when you are talking about winning championships or doing things really well or achieving your mission goals and objectives, is understanding your team strengths and weaknesses. So I'm from Cleveland, so this is a monumental moment for me. But with any of your team, the best high performing teams, that Cleveland team, they had some strengths, they had some weaknesses. So going back to that first slide, we're talking about individual gaps and skill gaps. Now, to talk about you, employee development for your team, what are the overall needs of the team? So you have all these individuals. They bring different skill sets. They bring different knowledge. They bring different abilities. They bring different experience. How do all these things fit together? And then as you think about those business goals and objectives that you have, what are the skill gaps you have as a team for that? So we started off at the level of just the individual skill gaps and growth areas. And now we move over to your team, to evaluating your team as a whole. So now we want to go, we've made like level B widgets. We move to level D widgets. But right now we have level C widget skill. Like, how do we ensure that we have the right skill sets across the team to make sure we're getting to where we want to go to from a overall team strength and weakness standpoint and hitting goals and objectives of the organization? All right, and then last part we'll talk about when we talk about the professional development needs is making sure that everything is aligned with the company goals. So you have overall goals, and we kind of went from the individual up to the team. Now we're at the organization. So do you have a firm understanding of the organization and what the organization is trying to achieve? Do you see how that cascades down to the team needs, strengths and weaknesses, and the goal needs of that team? And how does that cascade down into the individual development needs for the people who are individual contributors within the organization? All of these things should be aligned. You'll see in a lot of organizations, they don't really think through that. They have like the high level, here's what we want to do as an organization, because each organization was created with some mission in mind. And then they start going off on tangents that do or do not connect in to the overall goal of the organization. We have to be very intentional in regards to how we are developing our talent, how we're developing our teams, how we are pushing and evolving our organizations to ensure they align with whatever came down from the mountaintop. Because there is some reason that your organization exists. They had some competency, there was some brilliant idea, or there was some population in need of the service that you are delivering for them. So it's imperative for you, as you're talking about the overall development of your teams, of your individuals, of the entire organization, to have alignment between how you are thinking about development and the goals, objectives of the organization. So that's that first part, assessing the needs. So we'll pause right here for a moment. Give me some initial thoughts. So we talked about those three things, like kind of like assesses needs at the individual level, team level, and then alignment with company goals. Give me some of the thoughts you have right now on, is your organization doing that well? Is it something you have thought of? What are your thoughts right now?
I'll kick this off. So we're a small business, small family owned business, and the most of the needs that we have are not a full-time job, right? So one of the challenges we have is like finding people that can fill kind of multiple needs based on what they have, what they're bringing to the team. And then the biggest challenge, of course, is when somebody leaves, because chances are if somebody and when somebody leaves, we can't find somebody to just replace them, right? Because we have to almost restructure the needs that we have, and then okay, do we have somebody that could kind of fill that need, and then do we bring somebody in with this focus, and it kind of changes the whole dynamic. So yeah, just curious, what are your thoughts on small business where people wear potentially a lot of hats versus maybe a larger enterprise where you can be a little bit more granular with those job descriptions?
Yeah, so for you, you're looking for breadth over depth in regards to the training, because as you said, you're not going to be able to find one person who does this thing over here and this disparate thing over here for smaller organizations. And that's a common challenge you will see in smaller organizations. Folks have to wear a lot of hats for smaller organizations. So it's, and I'll go kind of to talent acquisition part of things, because you mentioned that in regards to looking to fill someone who basically got customized for your organization, which happens all of the time. You're going to, in your talent acquisition process, is finding someone who has demonstrated the ability and desire to learn and enhance their skill set. So someone who has demonstrated the ability to, continually learn and upgrade their skill set. And then are they going to be flexible enough for the type of dynamic environment that you have? So it's a different kind of look, because in larger organizations, they're looking for exactly this. I need this person who has these exact specifications because we got 10,000 employees. We need you to do this exact thing. So it's a different talent acquisition issue than an organization that has, Josh, how many employees do you have?
We're sub 20.
Sub 20. Yeah. So you have a much different thing going on than some 10,000 employee organization who has these very detailed, granular job descriptions. You're like, hey, I need someone who knows everything in accounting. Like that's the kind of employee that you need. So when you're looking for those folks, you're looking for someone who has a demonstrated history of being able to, number one, learn, and number two, adapt to different situations. Because they might come and do all the accounting stuff, and then they might get the ERP, and then they might get some other stuff added on to them as well, which is fine because that's not what your organization needs. So yeah, so from a talent acquisition standpoint, look for folks who have demonstrated the ability and desire to learn and who have demonstrated flexibility in what they will do.
Yeah, helpful. That makes a resume like almost not useful at all.
Oh,
Right?
don't get me started on resumes.
Yeah, it's like how do you even like everybody sends a resume. I'm like, if you're interested, let's have a conversation because your resume is not going to tell me what I need to know.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I did a session yesterday for a different group. We were talking about job descriptions and job inclusiveness in regards to job descriptions, and some of the different criteria you'll see in job descriptions don't have anything that do what you actually want. Because when you're when you post for a job for your organization, you have in mind some things that need to get done, some key responsibilities. And those key responsibilities need to have these knowledge, skills, and abilities. And there's sometimes we'll just slap 4-year degree on that because that's the only way to get that. That's not the only way. And I'm not bashing education. I have my master's. I sit on the board of directors for a college. So love education. Learn everything you can, kids. However, sometimes we put roadblocks in place that don't make any sense for us as organizations. So yeah, so the way that we think about resumes is probably not the best way. Resumes should really show knowledge, skills, and abilities people have acquired in ways that are tangible so we can see what have you actually done and what skills do you have. We're already way far afield. What time is it yet? Okay. Any other thoughts in regards
Thanks,
to
George. It was
assessing
great
needs?
having you today. And no,
And that completes my TED Talk. Any other thoughts in regards to assessing needs, either at the company goal level, the team identification level, or the individual level in regards to assessing the needs?
I hate to ask, but I'm going to. How do you do that assessment? And I'll say I've done them in the past where it was just executive team sitting down and kind of reviewing all of the employees.
Yep.
What does the assessment look like for, let's just say, a 100-person organization? How do you go about conducting that assessment?
So a 100-person organization, so it goes into that whole process in regards to talent management. So there should be some way that you're going about evaluating how well people are doing their jobs and the competencies that they have. So the baseline of it is, do we know what we want these folks doing in these roles? In Josh's case, it's pretty fluid because they're going to be adding or removing tasks on a regular basis. So it's hard to put a one size fits all. Here goes a big container I'm gonna put this in, but it's very customizable. First, having a clear understanding of what you want out of each role. And again, that's very dynamic, very fluid, depending on you being a 100-person organization, even what it is you do. So that's number one, understanding what they do. Number two, understanding how you want to measure people's success or failure in those roles. So you have to have a clear understanding, because if you don't, folks will just show up at the end of the year and be like, I showed up every day and I worked really hard. And then knowing where you want to go forward from there. So understanding what you want to do, understanding what are going to be those measures of success are the key things that you need. And that's just speaking at a very general level without getting to a specific example.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear other thoughts from others. Like since Chuck's already derailed us that way, how are other folks talking about, assessing the talent needs or skill gaps for individuals in their organization? Didn't Chuck say y'all supposed to share it? What's going on here? Come on, come with the goods.
I can share for a minute. I appreciated when you said my ears perked up about aligning. Everything needs to align back to the mission for the company or the goals for the company, right? I am somewhere where we have quickly grown from about 25 to 40. And there are people who are saying, like, we can just keep doing things the way we were. It's not that different. And really resist what they see as like these corporate bureaucracy things, like reviewing goals and setting goals. But I think that's the selling point, right? Like, we're not just doing it to check the box for people like, yep, you did your goals this year and now we're going to put it away and never look at it. Like, it's all about how it aligns with what the company needs to do. So big takeaway already. Thank you.
Yeah. And there is, and I have this later in the presentation, but I'll just talk about it now. When you talk about folks being resistant to putting in processes or things of that nature, there's a little bit of fear there. Because if someone has had success or someone is, doing well in a role and the way it's structured, and you talk about putting in these measures or checks and balances where there have not been any, you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. How is that going to impact moi? And that's a legit concern because, these jobs are how people are putting food on the table. So we have to be thoughtful. Yes, we have our goals and we have our objectives from an organizational standpoint we need to hit. But we always have to stay cognizant that we're dealing with humans that have their own needs, whether they're individual or they have a family or whatever that is. So they're usually looking through the lens of how will this change in the organization impact me and my needs. So we have to stay cognizant of that.
And can you share what you think some of the best interview questions would be? I know open-ended, but to really get at whether they really are flexible or just say, yeah, I'm flexible, I'm a team player, that sort of thing.
Yeah, those behavioral based questions. So I know we all hate them, but tell me about a time where you had to adapt to a situation where we didn't have a playbook for it. Because if you're talking about 20-person organization, you're creating a playbook on the fly. If you're growing from 25 folks to 40 folks, you're almost doubling the size of the organization. The playbook you have for 25 folks does not work for the organization you're at 40 folks. So, hey, tell me about a time where you had to create new working parameters and guidelines for organization that you were in. A lot of folks can't because, I mean, and you go all these different paths in regards to careers. I've seen it all. And I started off my career in a 7,000 employee global organization. There was very much guardrails and definition on it, all things. I've been president of foundations that had like five employees, and we had a whole bunch. There's a much different conversation. Right now I'm consulting for organizations that have single-digit number of employees. Smallest organization I work for right now has 5 employees. So what we did for my 7,000 employee company has nothing to do, no bearing on this 5-person organization. So starting off for your type of organization, tell me about times when you had no guidelines, no rules. What did you do? How did you improvise? What did you put in place to make sure your organization could go the way it needs to go?
Isn't that also one of the screening issues there? Because if you have people who come out of large organizations, right, there's a set of expectations that comes with that around how buttoned up you are, how your HR processes will work, all of that. And if they don't have experience in the more fluid dynamics of a small organization, their expectations may never align with what you have to offer.
And that happens very often. And people who've just been in larger corporate organizations, they get into smaller, more dynamic situations, and they struggle. They struggle. Some folks are adaptable, but they're struggle. So I'm not saying don't ever hire from bigger organizations, but you have to ask those questions in regards to give me times. And not saying all big organizations are bad. Some organizations allow for creativity and innovation within the smaller parts of the organization. But yeah, that is a significant consideration you have to think about when you're pulling someone from a bigger, more structured, formalized organization into a more dynamic, growing, or smaller kind of environment for sure.
George, we have we use quite a bit. We've migrated to the Ideal Team Player book. And by the way, I'm out of Cleveland too, so I can respect that that picture that you had there. That was great. But we really focus on hungry, humble, and smart when we go through our interview process. You know, the resume gets you in the door, but we kind of shed all those things and go after whether the person has these 3 attributes to them. And I'm just curious if you believe in that. Have you used that? Do you know what I'm talking about? I would assume you do, but the hungry, humble, smart, the ideal team player.
No, I haven't heard of that before, but just from what you've shared in that 15 seconds there, yeah, because there's so much that goes beyond. There's the experience piece, but are they wired to want to give you their discretionary effort? Are they wired to want to problem solve? Are they wired to want to go above and beyond, to use a cliche term, for your organization in pursuit of a mission? Like, why are they here? Because there are plenty of places you can go just to collect a check.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at a smaller organization that is growing and advancing rapidly, you have to be in for the mission, because sometimes you're just going to end up with that 70-hour week. And everybody you look to your left and your right, they're right there with you. So you have to know what you're signing up for. If you want the 40 hours a week, there are plenty of organizations that offer that with a 401k and nice benefits and this, which is great. But it's just not, they're the fit in regards to being smart, hungry, humble for your type of organization. It's a different thing than it is for other organizations.
Yeah, the smart is not what you think it is. It's more of a EQ type So it's the SMART is EQ. Obviously, humble is humble and hungry is hungry. So it's done good for us. But I was just curious on your take of that. So
If Chuck adds another hour to the presentation, we can get into EQ.
I'll
Because
back off.
like EQ is so important, especially we talk about these organizations, less than 100 employees. I think 150 is the cutoff. We talk about, the size of organization. You have less than 150 employees. Like, to a certain extent, everyone's going to come across everyone. And that EQ and how you interact with others, how you work with others, the level of respect you give to your coworkers who do different jobs than you do that you may or may not understand, that EQ part is exceptionally important. And the wrong level of EQ in organizations that are trying to rapidly grow, that can derail your efforts significantly. Awesome. All right, now we've used half our time. We'll get to the second of our 7 topics. All right, so how do you create a supportive environment? When we talk about, developing talent within the organization. So the first one is just fostering a learning culture. If you as leadership in your organization don't prioritize learning within your organizations, your employer is not going to prioritize it either. So you being verbal and vocal about how important it is to have a consistent learning kind of a mindset, that is important just to set the right kind of frame for folks on what they want to do. Because it's really easy to just come to work and just do your job every single day. A lot of folks do that, but never give any thought into intentional learning, growth, and development. So for you, as leaders of your organization, foster a learning culture. Talk about what you're reading. Talk about what classes you've gone to. Talk about what you have done in regards to help yourself make sure you can continue to go. Be a place that like really encourages open communication and feedback. I've been in environments where new ideas go to die. So how you respond to ideas that are against the norm or who go counter to what is currently happening in the organization, that will help set the tone, a positive or negative tone for development, learning, growth, all those things. So I'm not saying you have to accept every single idea that comes across or every idea that comes across as good. It's just that, are you creating an environment where those ideas are welcomed, where those ideas are part of the conversation? Or are the ideas in your office only allowed to come from 2 or 3 folks who kind of run the thing and everybody are automatons, just order takers? Or did you just have a bunch of order takers with 2 or 3 folks who just have all the ideas? And you have to be thoughtful. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's the kind of environment you want to have. If you want folks to learn, develop, and grow, you're going to have to create an environment where people feel like they can have open communication and the feedback is appropriate, where they feel like it's okay to be able to challenge the leadership within the organization. And the last thing I will say in regards to, creating a supportive environment for learning, growth, development is make sure people have the resources and opportunities for growth. I know I've worked in a number of different manufacturing kind of cultures where the folks on the line, they can't step away. Like I've always been in like office kind of roles. So I can go do whatever, whenever, just block it on my calendar and step away for 2 hours to go take this class or whatever. The widgets are still going to be made. Those folks who are on the line, who are in operations, who are doing that work, you have to be thoughtful about how are they going to grow? Because they want to grow as well. They're part of your organization. And if you're a manufacturing organization or operational organization, how do you carve out time to ensure that there are abilities for those folks to be able to have those kind of opportunities? What we would do in a couple of the different manufacturing kind of situations I had, we would bring them in on times of not their shift to be able to take advantage of learning. And we pay them for their time and be able to help them develop and move forward with certain things. Because yeah, the work of the organization has to continue to go forward. So sometimes you have to get creative with our folks who are on the line and can't just step away for 2 or 3 hours, like employees who are sometimes in the office. All right, so just going back to those 3 points. Number one, foster a learning culture. If you as leaders of the organization are not fostering learning culture, your folks won't think about it. Number two, make sure you're encouraging open communication and feedback, because people need to feel like they can challenge or bring new ideas, and those won't get shot down. Even if it's not an idea we go with, like it's okay for people to bring forth new ideas, bring forth development. And that third thing, ensure that everyone in your organization has access to resources and opportunities for growth, even the folks who are working on the line. I'll stop right there a little bit. So any thoughts in regards to creating a supportive environment for growth and development learning?
I'll jump in again. I'm always reminded of the Stephen Covey quote where he says, you can't be efficient with people. So whenever I see an opportunity to provide some training or use an event that's occurring that we need to talk through as an opportunity to train or cross-train, like I have to keep in my mind that this is an opportunity to grow people and not just solve the problem. So to me, that's a mindset thing that just has to be across the board. And what I found is, because I take that approach, my team members now do, right? They see something happen. It's like, ooh, who else should experience this, this thing? So they start to use my language where, ooh, let's learn this together. Let's figure this out together. So that's kind of how I've approached it. And I mean, it's easy as an operations person who's focused on efficiencies and save and all those kind of things to like, how quickly can we solve the issue? But being able to step back and be like, how much can I grow people with this experience, right? That's a mindset thing that just starts to spread over the organization.
Josh, that is a phenomenal example. Now we're really done with the session. Because that's what we need. The people need to see you as a leader encourage these behaviors. Whatever you all as leaders, the behaviors that you encourage and you fostering growth and learning kind of environments, they will pick up on it and they will go with that. If you don't foster that, they'll go with that. They'll go with you being leaders. They're going to go whatever tone you set with these things. So Josh, that's a fantastic example. Any other thoughts or comments in regards to creating that supportive environment for learning and development? All right, we will pop to our third topic here. So next thing we're going to talk about is development planning. So first thing I would imagine everyone's heard of like SMART goals. So as you're talking about the planning for the folks, are they specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based? Sometimes you'll see the SMART acronym with different words. I like this set of words for the SMART acronym, but like the thing is just making sure that you're being thoughtful in regards to what the goals are in regards to development for both the teams and individuals. So make sure they're clear. Like, does everyone understand what page we're on? You'll be surprised how often folks are like, well, I think I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, well, are you? Or I think I know the goal is, but do you? Sometimes we don't. We're just like, okay, you're going to be doing that work and not give them like what the goal is for it. And I'm not saying it has to be a pinpoint goal, but give them a ballpark that they know they're working with. So measurable. I've heard the term, you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I go back and forth on that phrase. There is some truth to it. There are areas where that really doesn't apply. But is there some way you can measure it, either qualitatively or quantitatively? Like either way. So there has to be some kind of measure to understand, are we going at least in the right direction? Are we trending the right way with this thing? So be it quantitative or be it qualitative, can we measure what things we're trying to do? Attainable. If your organization's goal is to solve world peace, I mean, good luck. I mean, there have to be things that like are realistic, because if you have some unattainable goals, that's not motivating. It's just like, well, we're never getting there. Stretch goals, yes, but something that we can get done with the resources that we have. Relevant. how many times have you looked up and some folks in your organization are working on something and you have no idea why they're working on it? How many times? Like how many times? I can't tell you. I'm like, okay, now why they working on that? Well, because of this outdated procedure policy that we did back then. I'm like, why? So just revisiting, just to understand, there's the stuff that we're working on, but they are excited. Josh is commenting. They are excited. Hey, we did this really, really well. So, like, so what? Who cares? If the stuff that they're doing is not relevant to your overall organizational goals or the goals of the team, like, please stop. Please stop doing that. And then time-based. We have to understand that we're pushing things forward, because if we don't have time structures around things, things just linger. Anything will grow for the box we put it in. We often say that, like, deadlines, any project will grow to the deadline we put on it. So if you want things to actually go forward, put some time-based measures on that. So the question here is, so when you're creating personalized development plans for the folks who are on your teams, that question that's in the middle there, the what do you want, it's one of those things where you would think people have an answer to that. They do not. I do coaching in my practice, a lot of one-on-one coaching. I can't tell you how often I ask the equivalent of what do you want to be when you grow up, and people have no idea. And not saying there's anything wrong with that, because a lot of folks don't. But just to have that thought for you as leaders, asking this question to folks of like, hey, you're here, you're working really hard for us, you're very talented. What do you want out of your career? They have to give that some thought, because all these people who come and work with us, it's not just they get to do our work, it's they have to be getting something out of this experience as well. That goes beyond just a paycheck. Because you just want a paycheck, you can go get that anywhere. You having the conversation with them in regards to what do they want out of their career, and how can we help create a personalized development plan for you to make sure that you can attain those things you want out of your career. That is a significant part of your job, your responsibility to these people that you lead. Now we're going to balance that, because we have those personalized development plans. Now we need to align those plans we have career-wise with the plans we have for our organization. So hopefully you as an organization, you're thinking about succession planning, workforce planning. Even if you have a small organization, you're saying, well, if such and such leaves, who has enough of the skill set that they can be able to go into that position if that person leaves? Especially if you have some critical positions within your organization that are central to the success of the organization, for sure. So being thoughtful about, yes, everyone has their career development plans individualized, and then you as leadership within your organization coming through to talk about workforce planning, succession planning, like where do all these talented folks within our organization fit within our organization as we project 2-3 years into the future? If this person leaves in a critical role, do we have anyone within our organization that we can start growing now that will be ready for that position if that person leaves? So all these three things go together in this part in regards to development planning. Number one, ensuring the goals are smart for folks' development plans. Two, ensuring that every individual within the organization has their development plan. It doesn't have to be anything crazy or robust. It could be 3 different points of here are the 3 things I want to focus on in regards to my development. Nothing that takes a whole bunch of time. It could be a conversation, but you need to have that conversation to understand, what do those folks envision for themselves? What do they want out of their career? And then having the conversation with your leadership team. Here are the folks within our organization. Now, what folks are we grooming, are we preparing, are we giving the experiences for, to ensure that they have the necessary skill sets to move into leadership positions and to continue to progress within our organization? Okay, we'll stop there for a quick discussion in regards to development planning. Any thoughts, questions, comments in regards to those 3 slides we just talked about in regards to career development planning?
When you have people give you the blank stare after the "what do you want to be when you grow up" question, any tips for pulling it out of them?
No.
They just have to think, right? They just,
Yeah.
I can't tell them what it is.
You can't tell them what it is. You can't tell them what it is. You could just
Yeah.
encourage them for self-reflection, because some folks some folks don't get there. They're just like, hey, I'm coming to work. I don't need to come to work, and they don't. Because when you think about it, when you really think about it, it's a big scary question. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want out of your career? Because folks will be like, well, sometimes they don't want to aim too high or too low, because they have these pictures in their heads. Well, if I say career-wise, I want to be the CEO, that means I have to work 150 hours a week, and I never see my kids, I don't get to sleep, and they create this picture in their head. Or sometimes folks will undershoot, and they'd be like, I don't want to say anything too small, like, hey, I like what I'm doing right now, I'm good with it. So for you just to be encouraging, like, hey, we're here to give you the resources to help you whatever it is you want, but they have to want that for themselves. So yeah, I often get the blank stare when I ask folks, like, what do you want career-wise? But I keep on coming back to it. I'm like, you need to think through this. Even if it's you lying in a spot where you're like, hey, the work I'm doing right now, this is the work I love. I want to continue to do this work and get better at this work. That's a great answer. Or it's like, I want to lead this organization. Like, cool. Here are all the things you need to do. Here are the skill sets you need to grow. Here are the experiences you need to have in order to lead the organization. And that's cool too. But just keep on like saying, hey, we want you to be thoughtful about this and be intentional about this. And don't just let your career just happen to you.
Yeah.
I was gonna jump on my answer to Diana's question too, George. It's just like if I want to give people the heads up, like, hey, next week we're doing a review. I'm going to ask you about what you like about the job, where you want to give you some time to think about it. Because yeah, if you spring it on them, I'm sure it's a lot of like, what?
Yeah.
That's like, and then I have a question for George or just the group when it comes to SMART goals, and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but I find that like the higher level the person in the organization is, the harder time I have writing SMART goals for them. And so I feel that the newer employees, the more entry level stuff, I can say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z by the end of the year, like go do this projects, get to these milestones, and it's fine. But when I'm working on the higher level position reviews and setting SMART goals, I struggle to make them smart without forcing it to happen. So I was curious on your thoughts on that, or if anyone else has those kind of experience.
Well, let's hear from the group first.
It seems like it would follow your first 3 slides on alignment with the corporate goals. and somehow those corporate goals have to align with those SMART goals that you're wanting to see him achieve or her achieve.
Stephen, could you be more specific on what makes it more challenging?
Yeah, I was thinking through this on a previous time. I don't know if it's because I want to give people with higher responsibilities more flexibility, or I want to point to Carrie's point. I want you to push this initiative forward and get your team working effectively. But it's hard to say. I want you to make sure Patty gets this project done by the end of the 3rd quarter. I mean, is that what the intent of the SMART goal? See, I don't know if I'm trying to give them too big picture things, or I want them to have the flexibility where I don't want to box them into a goal. How do they know? How do I know when they're doing a good job? George's point's a good one. How do we know we're going the right direction? Are we getting better? So it needs to be measurable. So maybe I don't know if it's the time based or being specific, but I don't know, I feel like the higher you are in the organization, the more responsibilities you have that are higher level and maybe longer term too. And again, or maybe I'm just doing it wrong and everyone else can give all of their high level managers very specific SMART goals that are well defined. So just wanted to bring it up.
Wait, Aaron.
Hey guys, yeah, I was thinking about this kind of from the standpoint of a growing and scaling organization. Like when you're small, I've discovered that you can have very bespoke one-on-one conversations on this is what I need you to do in order to like exhibit more leadership and move on to the next level. And that might be fine, but once you have like a number of managers, those conversations can go all sorts of directions. And in every organization that I've been that has been able to make a transition to like a scalable framework for that is you got to have like really concise career path and leveling matrices built out that explain and literally written down. These are the things that we would expect: skills, attitudes, behaviors from this level that you're at to this next level. If you want to move, whether it's on a manager track or an individual contributor track. And those kind of allow all the managers to have like similar conversations instead of like, oh, if you do this for me, I'll promote you, right? And then those also then kind of set the stage for you to be able to like create OKRs or whatever framework you're using to like drive, because you can literally point out and it says like, if you want to become a manager, these are the skills and behaviors that I need to see. And then you can have a real good conversation about like, okay, what would that look like, right? And once it's written down and you can actually pinpoint it, it just makes it easier to create OKRs, because you can always point back to this like standardized way of thinking about it, and you're not just making it up. So it really helps managers to figure out consistently how to do this. And by the way, even when you have that, it's still hard, but it's actually much easier than basically letting all your managers loose to try to figure out what to tell employees what to do in order to move to the next level. So.
I just want to add to Aaron's comment that we've created what we call a proficiency matrix for our main business, Employee Benefits Consulting Administration. So it outlines all the skills and knowledge you need. And then we have kind of the ranking of where you are in that proficiency level. And then you're supposed to align with your manager so you have a clear understanding of what I need, where I am, and what I need to get to the next level.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
This is excellent. And it went back to, I think, Chuck, you had the question in regards to, give me some details in regards to it. So Aaron and Jason just gave a couple really good examples of how they are, creating that structure for folks. And that's really important structure. So Aaron, I like to talk about OKRs. So the Andy Grove book is really good in regards to going into those and how you use those to manage. And Stephen, to your question, like there's so much that is needed here, especially when we talk about managers, that sometimes organizations don't go through the opportunity to skill up their managers, and they kind of, like, to quote Aaron, they kind of let them run wild to a certain extent. That's an important piece. As you are making that transition from a smaller organization to an organization that has levels of leadership and management, being thoughtful and structured in regards to what the expectations are for them and how they can manage through others. Going to Josh's comment there in the chat, how they manage others and help to build, because they need to be able to carry that message throughout the organization. Awesome. All right, so we're going to pop to our next topic here along our journey. So our next topic is coaching and mentoring. So for all of you as leaders of your organization, coaching and mentoring skills are necessary. It was interesting, I was putting this presentation together, I typed in the word coaching and I got 5 billion results. There's just so much there. So I just grabbed this one. I don't know if this one was the best one. It was the first one that caught my eye. I was like, okay, we'll start with this. Because sometimes a question I'll hear from folks when, like, I'm talking about my coaching practices, what's the difference between managing and coaching? And you see some definitions here. And again, like, I just pulled this. I was like, this is close enough to start a conversation. So on the right side, you see asking questions, getting feedback, being supportive. The asking questions part is the really key part. And to me, good managers do a bit of both. So you, as managers of folks, you should have some key coaching ability, there. But how do you ensure that you're growing folks, you're asking the right questions, you're helping them to solve some of their own challenges? Because you see on the management side, it says has the answers, but you do want to sometimes provide like very direct guidance. But sometimes you want to give, here goes the guide posts, here goes the framework, but I want to see your creativity. I want to see what you bring to the table, because if I just needed a machine to do it, I type it in the chat GPT and get an answer or something of that nature. I don't want a robot in these roles. I want you to be able to bring creativity. I want you to be able to help push us and also to help grow us as a business. So for you as leaders of your organization, being thoughtful about your approach to coaching, and again, 5 billion results in regards to coaching. Everyone has their own approach and how they do it, but it's important that you do it. It's important that you have the conversations with your employees to help them be thoughtful about their growth and development and thoughtful about how they're challenging, attacking problems. So next one here is, now we talked about coaching, mentorship. So how do you help your employees in your organization establish mentoring relationships with folks who are not their boss? Because that's really important. And here again, you type in mentoring, you only get 4 billion results for mentoring, 5 billion for coaching, only 4 billion for mentoring. So here's one of the things, it's like kind of a difference between coaching and mentoring. But people need to have folks who are not their boss, not in their direct line of supervision, who we can just talk to about some of the challenges. Because sometimes they want to complain about what's going on. So to be able to have someone to help them think about the challenges they're going through their organization is really important. So for you as leaders, the key for you is to encourage your employees to have mentors for themselves. And whether you do it for a formalized program in your organization, or you just strongly encourage folks to get mentors and talk about the benefits of mentorship, either way is fine. I've seen organizations do it all different kinds of ways. I've been in charge of mentoring programs for nonprofits, for the organizations I've been at. You can do it whatever way you want to. Just the key thing is ensuring that your folks are having these mentoring kind of relationships is one thing I want you to take away from this slide. Ted Lasso School of Coaching. Hey, Ted Lasso's a good guy. I coach soccer for my 11-year-old daughter, which I can tell you, 95% of behaviors of adults are just behaviors that people have as 11-year-old girls. They just get a little bit taller. 95%. And the last thing I'll mention in regards to coaching and mentoring is providing constructive feedback. If you have that angst about conversations that you're not having, please, please, please have those conversations. And you can build skill sets in regards to having hard conversations, crucial conversations. I used to be a trainer for crucial conversations. So sometimes I'll do a class that gives you those skill sets. But you can look up the book, you can look up different kinds of models in regards to having those tough conversations. It is exceptionally hard to grow organizations and keep them and scale them if you are not willing to have critical conversations with folks when things aren't going to your expectations. So for yourselves as leaders, make sure you're building your skill set to be able to provide constructive, critical feedback to folks to make sure that they can get back on track. Because we want success for all the folks who are in our organizations. Well, 99%. There's some jerks you just want to go away. So we want success for 99% of the people in our organizations. So making sure that you can provide, time-based, timely, critical feedback to say, hey, here's what I expected. Here's where it fell short. What can I do to provide you with resources and support? So next time we have this kind of a project, you can meet the expectation there. Those conversations are critical to the success and the growth and development of the people who are on your teams. Okay, I'll pause there. Any thoughts, questions in regards to coaching, mentoring, or giving critical feedback? So Aaron has his hand up.
Yeah, the question that's bubbling up is the classic situation of an employee has to get let go, or there's like a significant change in the responsibility. And they always say, like, why didn't anyone tell me about this in advance, right? And we're always preaching, you're always providing continuous feedback. Don't wait till like the quarterly review process, right? Don't make it like a massive surprise after a year that they haven't been meeting your expectations. And yet we still talk about this and we preach it and we talk to our managers about doing this, yet it still happens all the time that people are not having those conversations. So, and frankly, like I'll raise my hand too. Like I've been in situations where I would have to let people go or change their responsibility. And I'm like, damn, like I wish I would have had, I think I told them, but I'm not, I probably could have been more direct about it. I probably could have reiterated it. What's your, recommendation on how can we be, honest about this and kind of like live it versus just talking about it? Because I know that theoretically we all know that we need to do this, but like we could all be better at it. So
Yeah, sometimes we're hesitant to do it because we don't feel like we have the appropriate skill set to do it. We're envisioning for ourselves, if I start to have this conversation, they're going to say this or they're going to say that, and they might start doing this or they might, all these different things. We envision all those things. So the best thing we can do for ourselves is make sure we have a appropriate skill set for having these tough conversations. I mentioned crucial conversations. That's a model that I really encourage folks to look into that book or even take one of the classes. I've been able to teach those classes, but there are other similar kinds of courses that teach you in regards to how do you structure these conversations where emotions are going to run high, you're going to have differing opinions, and these things are high stakes. Like those are kind of the three main pillar points of a crucial conversation. Emotions run high, differing opinions, and they're high stakes. And you about to fire someone meets all that criteria. So one of the things that we can do for ourselves is if we feel like we are more equipped to have that kind of conversation, to practice those conversations, because crucial conversations, you actually practice having those conversations. And again, they're made up scenarios or whatever, but it's practice. We need to make sure we feel confident in our skill set of being prepared to have that kind of conversation. Understanding what do we do if someone, starts to yell or someone starts to say this or that, or is trying to evade the conversation, or they start, throwing other people under the bus. If we are equipped to have those conversations, we're more likely to have those conversations.
I have a question for the group and maybe George as well. Given the rise of remote, hybrid working schedules, are we more or less likely to tolerate behaviors that we may not have tolerated or ignored or addressed in a more in-person working environment? I'm just curious for those of you that have a more remote work setup these days.
Think the remote can hide the sort of interpersonal soft skills issues for longer. But I have found that on the more technical side, like the actual doing of your job side, it pulls that out for us a lot faster with people that are remote because they just can't keep up or whatever it is. And I don't know if it makes those hard conversations any easier over Zoom than in person, maybe a little bit because you shut it off and you're done, but.
No crying while walking out of the room situations.
Yeah.
I would think that if the person's not around, you could say, wow, I only see them every so often on Zoom. I guess I can tolerate that a little bit more because who wants to, no one loves confrontation. At least most people don't like confrontation. So I'm just curious if we tolerate more of bad behavior than we used to.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was one situation where there was a person who I had worked with previously, and I went to a different organization, and I basically vouched for them to get hired into a different department. And a couple of years later, that person got fired. So, and I was the HR business partner for that group at that time. So I was one firing the person I brought into the organization, and I literally helped them pack their stuff up and carry it to their car. So yeah, it's different when you're in person, for sure.
Go ahead, Aaron.
yeah, hey George, this last question kind of triggered another one for me. When obviously when we get into a situation where we're now at a critical high stakes juncture, you're about to get fired or something like that's like one stage, but like the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly feedback, what advice could you give all of us who've managed people to create a culture around every time we have a sit down with one of our, again, whatever the schedule is that we normally meet with our folks, that we have the space and that we create an expectation that the conversation is not just going to be about, how's the project going? That's a valid one, but like, how are they doing and how are they meeting expectations so that it becomes more of like a routine conversation and it doesn't become like, oh my God, I'm going to go talk to my manager. They want to give me feedback, rather than it becomes a, oh my gosh, I'm talking to my manager. They're going to give me some feedback today to improve, right? That sort of different culture. Like what could we be doing on a day-to-day basis to create that and then create space in those conversations so that those sorts of conversations are accepted. And we don't get into a situation where it's now the super high stakes final conversation that is becoming a surprise, or it gets really intense and potential tempers and all these sorts of things start flaring up.
Yeah. So for those of you who are in the technical space, you understand like different project management methodologies. So Scrum has something called the daily stand-up. So they'll start every day, 15 minutes, just get together. Hey, how are the different stories? How is this coming out? How's that coming? Who needs help on this? Who needs help on that? So it doesn't have to be every day in the morning, 15 minutes. During the pandemic, when I was leading at the Federal Reserve, during the pandemic, when it first hit, I was leading our HR business partners. We did a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, first thing in the morning, 30-minute check-in to ensure that we were supporting the employees the right way. And also all of us were on the same page of what was going on. So having some small, quick check-in on a regular cadence where everyone can be on the same page in regards to the work, checking with each other as humans, because that was another part of your question, just checking to make sure you're doing okay, because sometimes work gets overwhelming when we're going towards these significant goals that give us life. They're the reason we work at these organizations. You're working at small organizations because you believe in the mission. Like, if you just wanted a paycheck, you can go to wherever. We'll give you money. You don't have to worry 40 hours a week and you're good. But you're all these small organizations because you see potential. You see the opportunity to grow something. Like, you really care about that. So it becomes even more important that you're checking in on a regular basis with these other folks who are laboring beside you. So I would say the daily stand-up is a great practice. Daily stand-up, they say every day, 15 minutes in the morning. For you, maybe you tweak it. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 15 minutes. Maybe it's twice a week. But those regular check-ins as a team really help to create cohesiveness. And then they really lessen the opportunity for surprises or people getting off track. Any other thoughts in regards to coaching or mentoring? All right. I will hop back in. So we're going to go to tracking progress, and we'll go through this pretty quickly. This one is like pretty straightforward in regards to tracking progress. Set milestones and checkpoints. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to actually share the screen. That'll help. All right, set milestones and checkpoints, for you in regards to talent development. Just like if you say that we want development in a certain way, what are those milestone checkpoints going to be? So we know that we're actually making progress towards those development goals that we've set in place for folks. Measure your progress and success. I mean, because people have successes, so we want to make sure that people are having successes, that we are like acknowledging those successes that we have, and we're acknowledging they're going forward. Like, hey, your development plan was this. Your development plan was read 3 books on this topic this year. So far, you've read 2. Great. This is awesome that you're having that gold star for you, whatever it is. Here goes some cookies, some Cheryl cookies. Those sugar cookies are delicious. She didn't have too much of them because they have a lot of sugar in them, but they're delicious. But yeah, just measuring progress, acknowledging the progress and success people are having in development plans is a key thing. And then also, sometimes things change. Sometimes you create a development plan for someone, they're going along, and it's just like, this isn't working out. This was too robust, or this wasn't enough. No, you adjust those development plans as needed, making sure you're keeping open the channels of dialogue in regards to how people are developing, what the development plans you've created for them. So they're not etched in stone. The development plans are things that are helping people to grow, and both as individually and teams. So if they're not appropriate, if we need to adjust them, change them. We went through that pretty quick. So we'll actually, I know we're kind of starting to run short on time a little bit. We'll just go straight to the overcoming challenges part of it. This is the fun part. I was telling Chuck before we all got on the line this morning, like I have some clients. A good client is an organization, about 150 employees, construction company. They have people who have been there literally 30, 40 years, and they're doing the work. For some of them, they're doing the work the same way they were doing it 30, 40 years ago. So when you talk about change, in organizations, sometimes there's a lot of resistance to change. Sometimes there's a lot, especially talk about like there's sometimes family-owned companies that they have found success in a certain kind of way in the way they operate. And they're like, why would we do things different? Things are great the way they are, when you know that their things are good, but they could be much, much better. So it's just being able to help talk about the urgency. Sometimes this is a change management process. We talk about Dr. John Cotter. So he wrote Lead and Change, and then he wrote Accelerate. He has the 8 steps of change in that model. The first change is urgency. So if you have folks who are showing a reticence to change, a reticence to development, why is it important for them? What's the urgency of doing this? And if you don't demonstrate that urgency, it becomes very, very hard for folks who have been doing things a certain way to be able to change what they do. So that's number one, addressing that resistance to change, naming it like, hey, we need to change in this way. Here's why we need to change in this way, before you can even start pushing that change and really pushing that change management process for folks who are being reticent to change. There's the other issue when we talk about, balancing workloads. So yeah, I want to develop, but right now I'm working 60 hours a week. Where am I supposed to squeeze this development in? So we talk about development. It's that has a timer on it. I left the timer on that one. So we're not going to just stay on that. We're not going to stay on that slide because that one has a timer on it. But we talk about balancing workload with the actual development piece. How do you ensure that people can continue to work pretty hard towards those goals, but also develop? There's a 70-20-10 methodology when it comes to development. So 70% of development should happen on the job, 20% is through socialization, working with others, mentorship, coaching, and then 10% is just like training and classes. So hey, let's make sure that 70%, we're intentional about that 70% of, yes, they're doing the work, but how are these different projects tying into the development plan? Are we intentional about what we decide, what we give folks, and how we're using the main work for them to be able to balance their development with the workload they had? Because this is how some of your offices look like right now. But we can be thoughtful about pushing forward the development as we're doing the work that we need to do for organization. And the last thing we talk about overcoming challenges. When we start yelling about what the resources are, or fighting over the resources, this is how I look sometimes. We fight over the resources because they are. I mean, if we have, when we realistic, who are we going to send to which things? Because not everybody can go to a conference at the same time. Who are we going to allow time off to go do this? Are we going to cut into the bottom line to offer tuition assistance? Those are key questions that impact you as a business. So be thoughtful about how you're going to have those questions. There's no one right answer or not. Like there's no right answer in regards to will you offer tuition assistance or not. There's no right answer to how many conferences, how many classes, how much time you're going to spend away from work to work on this development. But you have to be intentional and thoughtful about securing the proper resources and support for ensuring the development does happen at your organization. Okay, and we'll just hop into continuous improvement, and then we can use our last 10, 15 minutes here for conversation. So last thing we'll talk about, please celebrate your successes and milestones. Before we talked about measuring successes and milestones, make sure you celebrate folks. If a person goes through and finishes their degree or finishes their long class certification, recognize that in your company email, on whatever poster boards, maybe you give them a gift or something like that. As folks are working to develop themselves, enhance and build their skill sets, recognize that, to celebrate that. Hey, whatever excuse for a party, let's go. Use these as opportunities to really make sure folks feel like they're a part of your organization. This is a great opportunity for employee engagement, but celebrate successes and milestones when folks are focusing on their professional development. You got to encourage ongoing learning and growth, because sometimes we'll get to the end of like a large course of study, like say, for instance, you get your master's degree and be like, oh, I'm done with that. I never have to do any more learning again. So for you as an organization, as leader of your organization, make sure you're just encouraging ongoing learning and growth. We're not saying you got to go get a PhD, but can you take this like 1-day class on this thing that is really central to your core work at the organization? So encourage ongoing learning and growth, because the world keeps changing. The world keeps evolving, and it's evolving faster and faster. So it's so important for us as leaders of organizations to ensure that all of our employees are continuing to evolve with the world as it evolves, that we're continuing to learn the new tools that allow us to be more effective than we've ever been before. And last thing is, needs changes and trends. Right now, if I want to like pull a trend off the top of the head, like AI, the AI tools that are out there, it seems to be like 100 new AI tools pop up every single day. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I'm on a newsletter that talks about different AI tools. There are AI tools popping up here or there. And that's just the current thing. It'll be holograms next month. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be. But we have to continually adapt to the needs and trends that are out there, because your competitors are. Your competitors are going to take advantage of new technologies, new trends. They're going to adapt. So for you and your business to make sure you're staying in the forefront, you need to make sure that your employees are developing and adapting to the trends that are out there. All right. So at this point, we can have a conversation about like any of the things. Josh says AI is creating AI tools at this point. Oh man, it's wild. The AI, like the advances in AI, it's like literally like week by week. It is absolutely wild. Absolutely.
Hey George, I wanted to piggyback on the celebrating your successes piece. That is so vital, and it's something that is skipped far too often. And what you find if you start creating that environment where you're celebrating successes is you'll find that people they want to know what's next right after that celebration, right? Like that provides that kind of motivation to like, hey, that was awesome. We nailed that. What can we do next? Right? Like it almost like builds people up in that process. And it's sad to me how often it's like that celebration of success is, I mean, even if it's done at all, it's downplayed, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
good job. All right, now we're moving on. Like, hold on, no, let's have like a proper celebration here about what was accomplished. And what I'm reminded of, so I was a competitive performer, percussion ensemble, back in my early days. And what we found, was you could rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and then you hit a plateau, and like the rehearsals are no longer effective, and you needed a performance in order to make the next rehearsal effective.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the mindset I have when I'm managing projects and things, is like, okay, where's that performance piece? Like where do we get to a point where we can perform and celebrate that? Then the growth can happen again. So I just wanted to touch on that, because I think that's such a vital piece of management and supporting team and supporting growth and fostering that kind of growth mindset across the team.
Yeah. And it's huge just for employee retention. Like, oh, we celebrate. We care. It shows you care. Because people, I mean, it's hard. Like when I went to get my MBA, I full-time job, new kid, MBA. It was exhausting. It was exhausting. So to be able to celebrate, it doesn't have to be a degree, it can be a class, it can be whatever it is. But to be able to celebrate those things, that's meaningful to employees.
Anyone else? Or go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, hey, my question or my parting question is going back to something, someone had mentioned this at the beginning, that, you know, you ask someone what they want of their career, what do they want to be when they grow up, you know, some question of that sort, and they all kind of look, not all, but like many people have struggle with answering that. What would be, in the spirit of like education, I think this is actually understanding what you want is probably like education number one. What would you recommend? Like, are there any specific programs or courses? You know, what, like, if I'm meeting with someone and they're struggling to like, and I can't pull it out and I'm not trained enough to do it, you know, I'm not the psychologist. What would you recommend I tell them so they can understand what they want? Because if they don't know what they want and we're putting all sorts of goals in front of them, they may be going through the motions, but not really in the flow of it, right? So they're not going to be performing the way even they would want, probably.
Yeah. So personal book recommendation, and it worked for me. So it's a book called Goals by Brian Tracy. So Brian Tracy, if you're not familiar with him, he's like a sales trainer. He has like, I don't know, 50, 100 books. He has a whole bunch of books. So the one that was helpful for me, Goals by Brian Tracy, it just gives a framework for really thinking through like what you want and different prompts for you to give thought in regards to what you want out of life, out of your career, out of whatever it is you want to focus on. So that would be my recommendation.
All right, perfect. Buying it now. Brian Tracy.
Yeah, Brian Tracy Goals. That is it.
I got it.
I can't I don't think it's exaggeration to say like reading that book changed my life. Yeah.
Thank you.
I always ask things too, like, what projects have you worked on that you really liked? What did you like about that project? What people are you interacting with? So you're starting to prime them to say, like, what has excited you? What did you not even realize was motivating you? And then the challenge might then be on you to figure out what that direction leads them to. But yeah, have them look backwards on what's been interesting as a way to figure out where they're going.
Anyone that has not had a chance, like Kat Meckler, like Kat is like gold. Anything from you, Kat? Any kind of winding down, parting thoughts?
It's reassuring sometimes when you attend these. It's like, okay, I'm doing a lot of good things, but you always get these little nuggets of information, and just again the reminder of I'm going in the right direction and doing things. We are now more split. Remote and not remote, and yeah, it's definitely more challenging. I think I saw one comment, yeah, I hold but you know what, I hold everybody accountable, and so it's continuing, and I think that we're all doing a good job. We have to all pay attention to this. I'm fortunate to have a CEO that's very passionate about culture and employee development, and so it's a little bit more pushed throughout the company. Change management, my book would be the change management, the people side of change. I still, my last thing with this is, like, I always tell my team, if you're still doing something the same way you did a few years back, I'm like, you're doing it wrong. You got to constantly change, because I'm like, when I started at the company, there was no Google Docs, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting myself old now. I predate Google. So we were faxing everything. Do you still want to be faxing things everywhere? Come on, guys. So technology changes, and so if you don't keep up, you're gonna it just doesn't work. And that does, keeps people moving forward. And no matter how big or small the idea is, I don't care, that little nugget of, hey, here's an idea. So I think, like, everything that you're saying, I completely echo with. Continue to foster that good environment, and you know what, eventually those naysayers are either going to get booted out of the company, or they're going to change.
Love it. Thanks, Kat. Anyone else want to have a final thought or question for George?
Yeah, this is great. The only thing I would say is that, and I think it's implied, but for global companies, there are slight tweaks depending on the culture. So the approach you take, let's say in Manila, with the Philippines, is much different than what you would take with a European company like in London. So there are some modifications you do take, based on the culture of the company. in the global nature of the functions.
Yeah,
So-
it was interesting for me because when I led DEI, I led DEI for Lubrizol, so half our 7,000 employees were in the US, half were everywhere else in the world. So it was interesting leading those efforts because every country looks at DEI a different way, or it means different things to them, right? Like,
Yep.
what is DEI? What was that?
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, like in specifically like in Manila and even in the India culture, you typically have to be a lot more prescriptive around the development, and they're looking for actually very specific steps and dates and things like that. Whereas in the UK, it's much more laid back, and then in the US, it could be a little bit of a crap shot because it's just the nature of how we operate in the US. But that is one of the factors that I think that is important as you roll out these plans, particularly for global organizations.
That's a good one.
This is good. Pardon me?
Thanks, Greg. Yeah. We might have to bring George back for like an international HR discussion. Love it. So we're almost at the end of our time. So if you're able to come off mic and if you're able to jump back on video, let's just give George a round of applause. I think he's earned that from today. All right, we got some silent clapping going on there too. Thank you so much, George. Appreciate the time. I could have easily just stayed on the call for another 2 hours. It's very great to listen to you. So many insights. We'll definitely find a way of having you back. Thank you to all of our members for taking time out to jump on this call today. I know how busy everyone is, especially summertime here in North America, or I guess the Northern Hemisphere, where we've got so much going on. So thank you for leading by example, by taking some time out to develop yourselves, by attending these sessions. Speaking of, and then before we let George go, George, if you want to stay on afterwards, but please, if you need another voice at the table, reach out to George. Everyone's homework assignment for the weekend, if you can squeeze it in, is go find George out on LinkedIn, connect with George. I guarantee you, your IQ will go up by 20 points just by connecting with George. It's that simple. If you want to get smarter, just connect with George. But please, if you've got change or coaching, mentoring, some HR challenges, whatever it may be, talent acquisition, reach out to George. At least bring him into the conversation initially and see how he might be able to support you, because he does amazing work. So thank you again, George. Just a few announcements. We do have our big conference coming up on the 26th in Indianapolis. It's not too late to sign up and to show up. We would look forward to having you there. We've got a nice group of folks that are going to be there, and I'm excited to be there as well. Josh has been putting in a ton of work to make that happen. So thank you, Josh. On July 12th, we have Beth Maynard with Sales Gravy. It's going to teach us how to generate more revenue. We have more revenue, we can invest in more training. It's great. That's just the way it works. July 17th, we have the Pulse workshop with Anya Singleton from Double Gemini. She's no stranger to us. That is an amazing workshop if you haven't attended, or if you have attended, but you've you aren't like fully doing the Pulse process, then jump back in for that. That's on July 17th. July 26th, we've got our exec session with Josh. And then lastly, on August 9th, we have board options with Larry Steibel. I know a number of you have had questions about boards. Larry's been a long time a director of our Boston chapter as of a number of years ago, and he'll be in on August 9th for that. And I think I've got everything covered. Any final words for us, George? I'll give the mic back to you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to share time with you today, and go forth and develop those folks.
All right. Love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Fiona.